Hi, and welcome to the Hofline, your online hotline, direct line to the women-only attorneys at Hofheimer Family Law. My name is Katie Carter. I'm an attorney at Hofheimer Family Law, a Virginia-based family law firm dedicated to representing women exclusively in divorce, custody, and support cases. I'm here today with Shira Harrell, who is also an attorney who practices with our firm. She's also collaboratively trained, and she has a certified financial planner designation. Even though she doesn't practice as a certified financial planner, she has a lot of wisdom and information, especially as it relates to collaborative divorce, which is why we're here today. We want to talk a little bit more about it. Shira, for the people who don't already know, can you tell us a little bit more about what collaborative divorce is and how it works?
Sure. So collaborative divorce is a process. It's an alternative dispute resolution process, which is just a fancy term to resolve your case without going to court. Now, in collaborative, before you start participating in this process, you sign a collaborative participation agreement. And basically, this is a contract that everyone who's involved in collaboration, and we'll talk about that in a second, they sign this contract to commit to various things. The first thing is not to threaten to file anything in the courthouse, that they won't actually file anything in the courthouse, and that they will use good faith and operate with full disclosure with regard to all the issues that need to be resolved. And you work in a team-based approach through all the issues that the family, the parents, or whoever the parties are, through all the issues that need to be addressed. Now, people who are involved in collaboration, you have the parties, and then each party has to have a collaboratively trained attorney. The training for collaboration is fairly extensive. It requires a 30-hour continuing legal education requirement. It was a 3-day training. In addition to that 3-day training, you have to participate in about 12 hours of mediation training. So it's quite a commitment because it's really a different mindset. Instead of being adversarial, this is not adversarial at all. This is more cooperative and collaborative, as the name says. So it's really a different approach, and that's why it takes such extensive training to be a collaboratively trained professional. In addition to the lawyers, you also have a financial neutral, and this person can be a certified financial planner. They can be a CPA. And this person, what they do is they gather, analyze all the financial information that the parties need to work through and resolve, and help the parties come up with different options or solutions as to either who keeps what, how to divide what, and what are the ramifications of that division. They can also help with support negotiations in terms of how much one person really needs, how much one person can pay, and what are the long-term effects of a payout of support for a period of time. They can do projected future net worth. You can see how the disparities of the income, how that affects people in the future, all sorts of analysis, which can help you make very educated decisions when it comes to support. The other person that's involved in collaboration is a mental health professional. And this person can act in 2 roles. The first role is as a divorce coach, and the second role can be as a child specialist. And you can have one mental health professional, or you can have 2, one for each of these roles. It really depends on the dynamics and what's going on in the case. So the first role as the divorce coach, what that role is to help manage the emotions of the negotiation, because the number one reason why settlements fail is because people let their emotions overcome their better judgment. I mean, let's get real. Divorce is super emotional. These are tough issues. We're talking about kids. We're talking about money. It's scary. It can cause a lot of anxiety. And sometimes it's helpful when you reach a scary point of having to make a decision that you feel yourself, you need to process that. And to have this mental health professional there to do that processing with you can be tremendously helpful. I've had cases where the client knows we're going to talk about a super, tough topic like spousal support the next day. And what they'll do to prepare for that is to meet with the divorce coach the day before the meeting. So they can do some role playing when the conversation turns to this. How does that make you feel? What are some approaches of how to respond to that instead of just a knee-jerk reaction or an emotional reaction? How do we process that? And that in that particular case was very helpful. It helped my client move forward more effectively through that process. So divorce coach can be extremely helpful. We could take breaks during a meeting to help with this processing. And then as the child specialist, what the mental health professional does is talk to the kids and talk with the children. Talk to the parents. Usually not with the lawyers present, and help the parents come up with different ideas for the parenting schedule. So in collaboration, it's quite common to have the parties meet with the child specialist or the divorce coach to help talk about what are some frameworks we can work with for the parenting schedule. And then those terms are put down sort of in an outline form and then brought to the full team for discussion and ultimate agreement or tweaking or whatever we need to do to reach an ultimate agreement. So the idea behind collaboration is to use the skills of each of these sets of professionals to help the parties come up with a durable, respectable agreement. Because when you kind of analyze and look at what happens when we pay this amount of money for this period of time, or when we divide this asset, you don't get to talk about that stuff in litigation. That's not how it works. But in collaboration, we can really have discussions. Well, what happens? What is the future net worth if you have this payment scale or what have you? It's also factually specific. It's a little hard to give examples, but you have this global holistic approach to reach an ultimate agreement.
I mean, I'm not a collaboratively trained attorney, so full disclosure, but I've sat in on collaborative meetings, and I think it's a really interesting concept. As a brand new baby lawyer, I remember, learning about collaborative and thinking that it was a little intimidating to have so many professionals. And I think as a person considering options for divorce, the team of professionals might be intimidating to them too, especially not being familiar with all of the different processes for divorce and thinking maybe that it wouldn't look like that if you chose a different method of divorce. What do you say to people who are intimidated by the team and the cost associated with assembling a team? Is it really a barrier, and how does it all work?
Well, I'm going to give you a lawyer answer again, Katie. It depends, because
you can't
sometimes
help yourself.
I cannot help myself. That is my stock answer. I am a lawyer. But it really does depend, because if I meet with someone and it seems, well, they're really not that far apart with their husband or, the father, they're really not that far apart. Maybe we don't need full-blown collaboration. Really the key to know if collaboration is going to work is that both parties need to want to participate. If you have one person that just is not into it, they think, this is never going to work, that might not be the best fit. So to have the most effective, productive collaboration is when both parties are of the mind, look, this is the best process for our family, because they both walk into it with the mindset of, I want what's best for our family because that's what's best for me. Because everybody has to get their best deal, because that's how you reach an agreement. And if you don't have people on the same level, then it probably won't work. Now, when it comes to cost, I don't think collaboration is necessarily a less expensive process. In my experience, of course, depending on how many issues we have to resolve, a collaborative case can be basically the same cost as a contested divorce. It could take the same amount of time. It may not. I've had cases that settled in 2 meetings. I had one case that lasted 4.5 years. Now, the 4.5-year case was the most complex divorce case I've ever handled, collaborative or litigation. Every single issue was an issue. There was an adult disabled child. There were separate property issues. There were self-employment issues. There were all sorts of anything you asked me about, it was an issue. Not to say that the people were at each other's throats, but there were some tough things that we had to resolve, and they did resolve it. And I can tell you that the end result was so tailored for this family, and we never would have come to that resolution at court, because the ultimate resolution was not something that the court had the power to do. It was only something the parties could agree to do.
Well, and not even just in court. I feel like even when you negotiate a separation agreement with another attorney on the other side, it is still a traditional adversarial divorce in a way that collaborative divorce is not. It's not, a negotiated divorce isn't where we all come together and have some kumbaya moment and come to this custom tailored agreement. I mean, it can be, technically it could be, we always say that the limitation is, the creativity of the drafters, not, inherent in the separation agreement. But I think when you participate in the negotiated divorce process, a lot of people sort of have in their back pockets that if we're not able to agree on this, we can put it up in front of the judge, and removing that possibility, knowing that you can't put it in front of the judge if you want to, that you'd have to retain entirely new attorneys if it came to that, is a really strong incentive both to reach an agreement and to really put the work in to make sure that agreement's a good one, as opposed to in a negotiated case where someone knows, oh, the judge can't do that, so I'm going to stick on this point instead of working through the issue together. So I think that's what I love about it, and why ultimately, eventually, I'd really like to do collaborative work too, is because it keeps the divorce open-ended and keeps the focus on the end result, which is not just a divorce, but a good divorce, which is not an oxymoron. It's a real thing.
Right. And you brought up a great point, which is what happens if collaboration fails, because while it does have a very high success rate, it's not always successful. And the key point to know there is that if collaboration fails and the parties say, we can't do this anymore, we're at an impasse, we have to litigate, then everybody involved in that collaborative case has to get out, and the parties have to retain new attorneys and start from scratch. And nothing that was discussed or addressed in collaboration is admissible as evidence. So that also gives the parties a pretty big incentive to work past those impasses, because they don't want to have to hire new attorneys and start from scratch again. Yeah.
How often would you say that happens, that they ultimately can't reach an agreement and collaborative dissolves?
I can't recall how many collaborative cases I've had, because it's been about 15 years since I've been practicing. And I would say I could probably count on one hand the number of cases that have failed. And it's really not that many, because the people really are committed. And I would say that the cases that failed, one in particular I can think about, is one of the first ones I had, and it really wasn't the best fit for collaborative. The parties were not both buying into this idea of we need to do what's best for one another and for our family. They were pretty contentious, and that was challenging. And they ultimately ended up in litigation and resolving their case that way through the court.
Yeah, that was my last question. I think you've sort of answered it, but I'm going to give you one more chance in case there's anything else you'd add, which is basically, who would you recommend looks into collaborative divorce? I mean, you've said people where both parties really buy into the process, but I don't know if there's any other demographic information or, identifying, features that might lend themselves well to collaborative.
Well, one component that I recommend for collaboration is if you have a family business, or you have issues that you want to make sure do not get into the public record, because when you file a divorce and you litigate, a lot of that information becomes public record. So one of the key points of collaboration is privacy, because everything is contained in this group. There's, the financials and the discovery that could be public record in a litigated case are not public record when it comes to the collaborative process. So privacy, if you're keen on keeping your privacy, that's a great reason to look into collaborative. Another reason to look into collaborative is if you want to have more control over the process, because it's the parties who choose the pace of the case, how frequently we meet, what is the time space between meetings versus litigation. You really have no control as to when the hearings will be. The court sets the dates most times, and you never know when someone's going to file something or issue a subpoena or make additional discovery requests. It's very contentious and adversarial. So you have a lot more control over the process when it comes to collaboration. And I would suggest that if people want to learn more about, if women want to learn more about collaboration, you can go to the International Association of Collaborative Professionals website. That's the IACP, so International Association of Collaborative Professionals. We also have a statewide group, which is Virginia Collaborative Professionals. And in the Virginia Collaborative Professional website, there's a listing of all collaborative professionals that practice in Virginia. And I would say reading their bios, and, you can meet someone in your community who's collaboratively trained if you have more questions about the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Shira. I really think that people don't realize how awesome collaborative divorce can be, and what a great option it is for so many families who are really just trying to achieve a good result. I think divorce should not be one size fits all. And that's what tends to happen when these things go to court, is they follow kind of a predictable pattern. So this was really helpful. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. And as always, please feel free to visit our website at www.hoflaw.com for more in-depth resources, including articles, free reports, books, and information about our upcoming seminars and events. But thank you, everyone, so much for tuning in.